Hey friends, today we're talking about how to get your kiddo to listen the very first time you give any kind of direction. Kind of wild, right? But what we're looking for is like you say to your kid, hey, we got to put shoes on, and then your child does it. No more of this telling kids a million different times to get their shoes on. So, when we think about listening, the kinds of problems that parents typically describe to me tend to happen sort of in some particular spaces. So, number one, everyday routines. I'm talking about like toothbrushing, getting dressed, getting out of the house, sitting down to dinner. Sometimes listening problems happen during transitions. And if you think about those routines I just listed for you, many of those routines have transitions and sub transitions kind of like embedded into them. So when we think about transitions, yes, of course, think about the really big ones, but also think about just like getting downstairs from the bedroom to the breakfast table in the morning before school. There's 100 different transitions there, and transitions bear a really high cognitive load. And so if you're noticing that your child is having a lot of challenges with listening, I just want you to look. Is it the case that it's everyday routines, that it's transitions? Sometimes it's the case that listening doesn't happen because you're not anchoring your child. When I say anchoring, I mean connecting and helping them feel grounded enough so that they have any chance of actually following through. If your child is not anchored, that could look like staring off into the distance. It could look like not even tending to your words at all. It could look like just being totally immersed in whatever thing they're doing. Oftentimes, this happens when there's not enough connection. And what your child needs from you is connection so that they will then be able to follow you. Like, I trust you enough to come with you. So, we're going to talk a little bit today about how to build connection. Sometimes we ask our kids to do stuff, and the ask is just really too big. This could be because we have the expectation that you always do something. You always unpack your backpack when you get home from school. And now all of a sudden you can't do it. Well, development is not so linear as you might think it is. Development sort of happens like an ever expanding sphere in all different directions. And so if you're really stretching to expand in one area, like maybe you've got more homework happening at school, then it might be that there's a little bit of a deficit in an area of something that you've always done. So the ask is actually too big and the child needs more supports. And it's our job as parents to really identify where are the places where my child needs more supports and what can I do as the parent to help them get those supports. And then probably the most common listening problems occur when your child is otherwise engaged in something and not with you. Okay, so that could be like watching a screen, it could be playing soccer, it could be at a play date. They're engaged in something over here. And so when you make your ask, they're like literally not even hearing it. Okay, so just thinking about your particular child and really wondering where is it that they're getting stuck. As we start this conversation, there's three parts of the brain that I want you to be really cognizant about. These are the parts of the brain that really matter when we get into a listening conversation. The first one is the prefrontal cortex, okay? The prefrontal cortex is where thinking, language, rational thought, learning, impulse control, judgment all live. Finishes development around age 25. So those of you with 3-year-olds, 7-year-olds, 10-year-olds, they're not even halfway there. Okay, so this is where executive functioning lives. It's the most important thing is language. So if your child has access to the prefrontal cortex, they're going to be able to engage with you in age appropriate language. But here's the thing, guys. When our children become stressed, they tend to operate more from the limbic system in the base of the brain and less from the prefrontal cortex. So it's sometimes called flipping the lid, okay? So they start running from this part of the brain, which keeps them safe. Okay, the limbic system, it's like the seat of the emotions and constantly scanning the world for like, am I safe? Am I okay? What is going to happen here? And if my child references a past experience in which they were not safe, and now something about the current experience is similar to that past one, their limbic system may send a message to them, and this is like not rational, okay? This is happening like at a body level. That's like, we're not safe, okay? And then you're going to start to get big behaviors, hitting, kicking, yelling, screaming, running, all that kind of stuff. The base of the brain controls what I call the B's, like the automatic functions, breathing, blinking, heartbeat, stuff that your body language, stuff that you're born having, and that is happening sort of not at a rational thought level, but just to keep your body present. And so if you have a child who is operating mostly from the base of the brain and limbic system, they are dysregulated. They are not going to have the capacity to listen. It's not that they won't listen or they don't listen or they never listen. It's that they can't yet listen, because listening implies being able to hear, understand, make sense of language. Remember where language lives? Up here in the prefrontal cortex. So anytime we're giving a child a direction, I want you to make good and sure that your child has access to the rational thought part of the brain. This means that you're not approaching with tone, you're not yelling and screaming, your child's not feeling threatened either by your presence, your body language, your speed, any of that kind of stuff. So let's talk about what happens when people use the words no, not, stop, and don't. And I want you just to remember back what we were talking about when we talked about the brain and nervous system. One of the ways that we tip our kids out of the prefrontal cortex and into the limbic system and base of brain is with speed and tone. Okay. And when we're thinking about listening, speed and tone really often get in the way of our children's capacity to stay with us. Okay, so when you say something like, don't do that, stop that over there, not that way, no. Do you hear in my voice the tone? Okay, that is so different than up, plate goes in sink. Yeah, there you go. Here, I'm going to help you out today. I'll do it for you. Or, you know what? Yellow blocks go into this bucket. Here, the bucket is right here. It goes in. Don't put that block over there. There's so much tone. And when our children hear that kind of tone, they are going to start to operate from a more fight flight kind of space in the limbic system base of brain. Okay. That is not where you want them if you want them to respond to your language. So noticing that tone disrupted connection. Okay. The cognitive load is already high if you're in a transition. You're already working hard to follow through. And now you also have a parent with tone, and that is going to flip you right out of your rational brain. Oftentimes there is a lack of clarity. So if you say to your child, don't do that, stop going over there, it may be clear to you what you want them to do, but it is so frequently not clear to your child what you actually do want them to do. Okay. And so when we give directions, I want you to tell them exactly what to do as opposed to what not to do. There's a concept called auditory recency. So auditory recency is the idea that children retain the last part of whatever you say. So if you say to your child, don't hit your sister, guess what they retain? Hit your sister. Okay, that's not what you want. You want them to retain the thing you want them to do. And this is even more true in a safety situation. So if you're going to tell me that you're running into a parking lot with a child and the child is running into the parking lot and what you want is for them to stay with you. And so you're saying, stop running into the parking lot because it's a safety situation. Why are you putting the focus on the parking lot? Put the focus on what you want them to do. Stay with me. Get ahead of it, friends. The last thing about no, not, stop, and don't is that they just give children the felt sense that here's another thing that I'm doing wrong. Oh my God, it's so many things. So we collectively are going to stop saying these words. Now, I am going to show you how to hold the firmest of firm boundaries without this language. And we as a collective group of parents are going to stop, and we are going to start using positive opposites instead. So what is a positive opposite? A positive opposite is going to help your child stay regulated, stay accessing the prefrontal cortex. It's like pleasant anticipation. It tells the child like, oh, this is okay. I'm safe here. There is no tone. I know how to move forward. You are literally just telling your kid what to do instead of what not to do. And that simple shift is what helps them stay regulated, access the prefrontal cortex, feel the relationship with you like, oh, my parent is here and they are going to move through this with me. Positive opposites are going to give clear direction with no question about what is right. I had a family a while back who had these two little boys, and I saw a video of this interaction. And there's the parents sitting at the table over here, and there's a kitchen island. And then the boys were putting their plates over in the sink on the other side of the kitchen island. And this was from a Nest camera. And so the parents couldn't see over the kitchen island, right? So right as these little guys put their plates into the sink, the parents start saying, good job, la la la. And right as they do that, the kids are like pinching each other, right? And now it's like, what have you just reinforced? We want to reinforce doing exactly what we want our children to do, and positive opposites are part of that. So I want to just let them know exactly what they are doing well and exactly how things are going to go. Knowing that helps children stay grounded and centered. And honestly, it feels better in everyone's body, the parents included. So I want you to stop with the no nuts, stop and don't, and instead transition to positive opposites. Okay. So that's one piece of this. But if you really want your child to listen the first time around, you also need to integrate these other pieces. So you've got positive opposites. I want you to also get close. Getting close to your child when you give a direction is going to support processing. It's going to support regulation. We want you to be super clear about what the next step is. So if you're saying to your kids, stop picking your nose, but you don't really know what you want them to do with their hands, how are they supposed to know? You've got to tell them exactly what to do with their hands. And sometimes children are going to need extra supports. So once you've given a direction, you got to follow it up with extra supports. I never want you to give a direction more than twice. The first time you give the direction, the second time you follow it up with extra support so that the child is going to be successful. This is how we teach our children that we mean what we say and that we are going to help them move forward. When we think about listening, there are 6 P's that I want you to check. If you're like, oh my God, my kid never listens, I want you to make sure that you have checked out that you are providing all 6 of these things to your children. Number 1 is praise and presence. Are they getting enough noticing of what they do well from you? Many children are not. So just be real with yourself. How often are you doing that for your kid? The clinically significant amount of praise is 100 times. And yes, it does matter. The quality of your praise, right, is going to dictate the outcome. Don't say good job. Instead, I want you to tell them, again, exactly what they do well. Focus on effort. Parent nervous system. Is your kid not listening because you're yelling and screaming and or not accessible? You may need to take care of yourself. Positive language and framing. So we talked a lot about this one with positive opposites and really making sure that you are providing your child with positive direction that is clear and understandable, and that you're assuming your frame around your child is also a positive opposite. You're assuming your kid is doing the absolute best they can, and if they could do better, they would. And so me as a parent, I'm going to help them. We'll figure it out. Position. If you are giving directions from across the room, it's going to tank every time. So no directions on your child until you are within arm's distance. Okay, so you should be able to touch your child if you're expecting them to listen. Pacing. If you're giving a direction and your child can't follow through with it, that's my cue that my pace does not yet match my child. And so I want to slow things way down and break them up into smaller pieces so that my child has an easier time hanging with my directions. And finally, planning. Planning is really important, friends, because if you have a consistent listening issue, which many of you do, if you've had it once or twice, you're like definitely going to have it again. And so I want you to think about, what are the tools and supports that I can rely on in order to help my child have a more successful experience the next time. And part of planning is practicing. If it's happened lots of times, we want to practice having an easier time. What I would like you to go do right now is first take a screenshot of this, and then I want you to go get a journal or a piece of paper to write stuff down and really reflect on these questions. When was the last time my child did not listen? What was going on? How did I feel? When was the last time my child did listen? Do you see we're shifting the frame here? What was going on? How did I feel? What helped my child be successful? What are the most frequent no's, nots, don'ts, and stops that come up in my parenting? And what can I replace them with? I want you to actually think about your particular child, the directions you give, and what you can replace those negatives with. Write it down. When my child does not follow through on the first ask, what extra supports will matter for them? What do I want to try first, second, and third? Make a plan. Think about your child, what they need to thrive, what they need for success, and write it down. If it fails, okay? If it fails, I want you to come comment here. We'll try to help you figure out what we need to adjust. But some of you who have trickier, more highly sensitive kids are going to have to go around this a couple of times until you figure out the positive opposite that matches their intention and the extra supports that help them actually move forward. And that is what we're shooting for, that level of cooperation. Your child can have it. I absolutely promise you. And if you're like, I don't got it, Chelsea, this is not working, then I hope that you will reach out to me and my team. We have a whole program where I will personally walk beside you until this is easier. And all you have to do is reach out and I will get you that support.